there's an organization called Peace Action, and they're really extraordinary because they've actually, the Peace Action Network, have been doing the heavy lifting while you and I are busy Netflixing or having sex or whatever we might want to do. They're out there doing the grown-up work, which is helping explain what's going on. I want to introduce to you John Rainwater. He's Peace Action's executive director. And John, have we seen anything like this with North Korea in anybody's recent memory?
Well, certainly not to this level of threats going back and forth. I mean, one of the things that you were speaking of is the notion that we would launch a preemptive strike. And it's very dangerous to threaten this. I mean, Trump is playing a ridiculously dangerous game. But as you just pointed out, the so-called adults around him, some people hope that Tillerson would be one of them, are not really restraining him. And the people who are going to suffer from that game potentially are the Koreans, the South Koreans in particular. And when the Clinton administration looked at doing a preemptive attack before North Korea had nuclear weapons, they projected there might be millions of deaths. I mean, it's just
we're talking like 20 million, if I'm not mistaken.
Yeah. That's the thing that really boggles the mind. Yet with someone like Trump, I mean, that was something that they war gamed out and they quietly figured that out. This is something where Trump is just threatening on Twitter. His appointees are threatening, and to do this kind of escalation when millions of lives are at stake, it really does, as you're pointing out, boggle the mind.
Let's sort of set the stage here so we get a sense of what we're talking about. By the way, we are talking to John Rainwater. He is the executive director of Peace Action. And North Korea is pretty much in survival mode. I mean, they're a tiny little dot. They're not particularly chummy with anybody. China would be their closest friend, but that depends on the weather, depends on the mood of the day. And when you get threatened by the superpower of superpowers with, over 10,000 multi-tip thermonuclear warheads, potentially to devastate all living stuff, every molecule, every mosquito, every roach on the planet, which would be the outcome, you're going to take that seriously and not just as an angry tweet.
Absolutely, and a lot of if you look at North Korea's behavior, and certainly not a fan of the government system over there, I mean, they're playing defense, and a lot of this is about, like you point out, survival mode, and they feel threatened. And the way to deal with that type of situation is not to ratchet up tensions. What we need instead is diplomacy, like we had during the Clinton administration with the six-party talks. There were problems with some of the outcomes of that, but those can be fixed through diplomacy. And the Trump administration, the first thing that Tillerson did at the same time, he put military on the table, is he said, the time for talk is over. And a number of Trump officials have come out with this kind of soundbite that the time to talk is over. But when a country feels threatened, when they feel like their survival is at stake, the only way to deal with that is through diplomacy. Just putting more military threats on the table is not going to cause North Korea to get rid of its nuclear weapons. It's naive.
Let's pretend that most of us really don't even understand what the issue with North Korea is, which is actually probably a true statement, including me. I mean, I know about the Korean War, I know about basic geopolitical tensions, but this is not anything like World War II history, the Nazis, the Allies, the Axis. This is really this kind of weird, now it's the son, and it was the father, and whatever. And we just kind of... So let's just start from we really kind of don't understand what's going on. There has to be an end game for Donald Trump and his... I don't even know if they're neocons anymore, whatever this creature is now. What is the end game? There has to be an upside to this kind of aggression, this kind of serious, I believe Donald Trump even tweeted, what's the point of having nuclear weapons if you're not going to use them?
Which is terrifying when you think about it, and that's where things could really escalate out of control when you've got a leader like him, and you're threatening North Korea. I mean, if there was a preemptive attack on North Korea, again, it's almost a guarantee that North Korea is going to respond in kind, and then where does it all head? I don't know that always those in power know what the end game is, and that's the part of the problem here is the potential of this spiraling out of control. One of the things that Trump seems to be doing, with some help from the people around him, is boxing himself in. If he's threatening North Korea, then how does he resist at some point taking military steps if North Korea continues to test missiles or nuclear weapons? So I don't know that they absolutely have an end game in mind in terms of North Korea. I think, in a sense, by Trump having as much bluster as he does, he boxed him in from the first day because he was going to be tough and people weren't going to be able to boss him around. And if it's clear that North Korea is progressing more and more in the direction of having a larger arsenal that can, eventually hit the United States, although we're very many years away from that, that makes Trump look bad and hurts his brand. So I think that's part of what's going on here. Well, that's the way
I know.
Right?
I know.
That's his operating mentality is let me look out for my brand here. And you see a lot of confusion, and you can't tell whether it's thought out. For example, Trump said that his armada was heading towards North Korea, and then a few days later we learned
Australia. It's
through Indonesia, So was that some kind of brilliant fake out they pulled on the North Koreans, or are you seeing confusion in the White House and in the administration? It's really hard to tell. And I'm one of those people, rightly or wrongly, that often think foolishness is as powerful in administrations like this as having some well thought out plan.
We'd like to think so. You'd want to think so, that
yes.
The largest government on the planet, with the largest amount of spy agencies on the planet, with the greatest amount of military footprint in the history of all humankind.
Yeah.
Are we 900 military bases dotted around the planet? I mean, Alexander the Great would have gotten a hard on at even the notion of this kind of impact and imprint. So you'd think that you're not going to do big oopses from the Oval Office, that such kind of narcissistic buffoonery is best left for Saturday Night Live. But I guess they get their material from watching the real thing, which takes us to the next kind of important part here as we talk to John Rainwater. He is Peace Action's executive director. You can simply Google Peace Action. You're going to get pages and pages of all the good work they've done, and they're paying attention so that we can have this conversation right now and understand it. The relationship between North Korea and China, and the reason I bring this up is I was on a cruise ship 2 years ago, and I went to China, literally the slow boat to China, all the way from Alaska, through Russia, down through China. And the former, I think he was Deputy Secretary of Defense for Ronald Reagan. These retired guys give speeches on cruise ships to a lot of very conservative blue hairs that want to hear all the good news. And I asked him, point blank, and it was a radio interview, and I said, please explain to all of us so that we can understand good commie, bad commie. So Cubans, bad commie. No medicine, no food, nothing for you. Chinese, good commie. Factories, a new middle class. Sure, no human rights, but we like you. We want most favored trading. We like you. Yep. Good commie, bad commie. Explain, Lucy, the difference. And he said, well, you see, these are very complicated geopolitical nuances, blah, 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 blah. No answer. So China, good commie. North Korea, bad commie. You're in the peace world. How does that work?
Well, in this case, in terms of the tensions between the countries, one thing we don't want to do is assume as the president keeps saying, that if only China will weigh in and put pressure on their friends, the North Koreans, then it'll be all okay. I mean, as you kind of alluded to, China has certain interests vis-a-vis North Korea, like not having a bunch of refugees streaming across the border into China. And that's where it boils down to. We need to let the Chinese have their interests, the North Koreans have their interests, United States has its interests, and the way to hash this out is through something along the lines like the six-party talks where you negotiate it out. And that whole good commie, bad commie frame of reference kind of filters out the insight that every country has its own interests, and if you want to engage in diplomacy, it should be about coming to mutually sustainable agreements around interests rather than seeing countries as either good or bad. And we did see some success with the negotiation of the Iran deal, where a country that was bad from the United States point of view did come to an agreement that could work. And that's the kind of approach that we need with North Korea, and not just leaving it up to the Chinese to say, you're the good guy of those two, you figure it out, put pressure on North Korea, and it'll be all okay. It can't work that way. Everybody's got to come to the table, put their interests on the table, and work something out together. And that's a different frame of reference than the one that you rightfully lampoon.
Good for me. I mean, bad for me, good for me. Good commie, yeah. Bad commie. So I'm guessing that 99% of everybody watching this, listening to this right now, was not alive when the atomic bomb was dropped on Hiroshima and Nagasaki. So we actually know what these things do. We've seen the effect. We've measured it medically, scientifically. We know it's, as George Orwell would have said, double plus on good. So if Donald Trump were to preemptively fire even one of these at the Koreans, what is the likely percentage rate of them unleashing nuclear weapons anywhere they feel like to make a point?
Absolutely. I mean, they could unleash nuclear weapons, and just their conventional capacity is pretty astounding. I mean, they have one of the largest militaries in the world that could be streaming across the border into South Korea. They have artillery, they have missiles that can hit U.S. bases, they can do cyber attacks, as we've seen. So there's a lot that they could unleash, but it's just chilling to even contemplate unleashing a nuclear weapon. And we all recall the reports that Donald Trump was asking, why can't we use nuclear weapons? That's a scary thought. There is a bill in Congress that I would mention that takes away that first use policy. The United States has a strategic ambiguity about whether it would use the first use of nuclear weapons in a preemptive way. I think we saw the Obama administration contemplating getting rid of first use policy, and there's a bill in Congress that would sort of do that in a roundabout way of having a congressional vote before a president can unleash a first use nuclear attack, which can happen, as you know, in a matter of minutes. And with this president in particular, that's horrifying. So that's a bill by near you, Ted Lieu, with Southern California member of Congress, has that bill. There's a companion bill in the Senate by Senator Markey, and we're strongly supporting that to basically take the red button out of Donald Trump's hands, because whether it's tweeting or whatever it is, the guy is not the most disciplined person in the world, and that's not somebody you want making a decision in a few minutes of whether or not to launch a nuclear weapon. I think we saw that with the Syria attacks, where at least the report is that his daughter was upset about what happened in Syria, and he decided to fire off a bunch of Tomahawk missiles. Now, who's to say that couldn't happen with nuclear weapons? We need to take that button out of his hands.
Well, the good news was that Donald Trump owns preferred stock in Raytheon that manufactures those Tomahawk, 59 Tomahawk missiles, coming out to a tune of about $100 million worth of Tomahawk missiles, and their stock went up about $100 million. So Donald Trump made a profit, which I think in his calculus is the name of the game. It's pure business. I went to an orthopod yesterday because I was in a motorcycle accident. My knee hurts. I know you're dying to know this information. And this is in in L.A. And so, you sort of assume people are going to be a little more open-minded here about stuff. And this was a staunch Trump supporter, this orthopedic surgeon. And, he was talking about, Donald Trump in his heart, he really, he's okay with Jews and gays and this and that. I said, so what? I mean, who cares what, he loves vanilla ice cream. It's what he does that's a problem. And this is what you guys are looking at. Like, you've been monitoring, establishment bad guy behavior. Now you have this unpredictable, reckless kind where, and I mentioned the Nuremberg Code, and we'll wrap it up with this, which was designed by the United States of America to fight fascism and kookies like the Fuhrer. And the idea was that you can't just go assault another country because you feel like it, or they have oil, or they have this, or they don't have that. You just can't do it because you feel like it unless they attack you first. Wouldn't this be a violation of that international famous, we feel good that we created this law code?
Absolutely, and it's both in terms of launching attacks, like we saw in Syria, that was against U.S. law, and it was against international law, because as you pointed out about North Korea, and the same was true with Syria, we weren't, as a nation, attacked, and the only way to respond to something like what's going on in Syria, legally, under international law, from that era that you're talking about, is through the United Nations. But you're seeing this in a number of different places. I mean, Trump infamously during the campaign talked about torture. He talked about, threatening or harming the families of terrorists. All of those are against the laws of war. They're war crimes. And you're seeing him loosen the rules of engagement when it comes to drone attacks. He used the mother of all bombs in Afghanistan. We're seeing the airstrikes in Iraq and Syria climb up, and civilian casualties go up. You saw that horrible mosque attack in Syria. Human rights groups are very concerned. So there's a wide range of law of war, international law, war crime violations that the United States is really starting to get more involved in. Not that, just to be honest, during the Obama administration that the United States never crossed the line, but there's a dangerous, slippery slope happening right now where we're just paying attention to the laws of war less, and it's very troubling, as you're pointing out.
Well, I thank you so much, John Rainwater, Executive Director of Peace Action. The go-to plan is pay attention to Ted Lieu's legislation that would pull the red button away from Donald Trump's very large hands, as he's happy to tell us. And he'd like to demonstrate how large they are, and we can relieve him of the burden of that kind of masculine posturing, and rescue all of us mammals down here from being vaporized in a matter of seconds. Anything else we could do to follow you and learn more about your work?
Well, in terms of following us, definitely check out the website at peace-action.org, or actually peaceaction.org works, and sign up for our email list. One of the things that we're doing, like a lot of other people, we want to put pressure on Congress, so we're encouraging people to get out to town halls, lobby their members of Congress. Congress can be the resistance to Donald Trump, but only if we speak up. So that's a big focus of ours, and we hope folks will join with us on that.
I'm going to write that down. That's a meme.